name is Mark Sheppard, and I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Parental Alienation, my story. I was alienated from my first child approximately 10 years ago. Due to me having the contact details for my ex-partner, I was able to swiftly take her to court and deal with that quite swiftly. I met someone approximately 6 years later, and after her behaviour and the things that she'd done to me, I decided to call it quits. Don't get me wrong, I had a near enough newborn child. I tried everything in my power to get us help. I tried to ask her if she wanted help. She continuously refused help for about a year. Her behaviour and everything got worse and worse and worse, and the only option that I had left was to separate. Now, I was separating from her, not my child. But due to the fact that after trying to get help for a year, I decided to call it quits, she decided, well, that means you don't want to see your daughter anymore. I couldn't believe it. I just, how can someone feel that they can play God with your child and tell you when you can and can't see your own flesh and blood? It really upset me. It made me feel like I was empty. It caused all kinds of problems for me financially, emotionally. The job that I was in, it effectively ruined my life. So I decided to take some time out to self-heal, to get myself back on track. I started doing some research online because 10 years ago, when all my journey started, there was no name for this. I was just told by numerous legal professionals and Kafkas, well, your ex-partner's just being difficult. No. If someone is going out of their way to stop you from seeing your child, that is going beyond difficult. Anyway, so after going online to research what this could possibly be, I came across Parental Alienation. And from that day I said to myself, I will do everything in my power to educate and bring change. People need to know how and why parental alienation occurs and what solutions can be offered to tackle it. Some of you are sitting there thinking, what is parental alienation? Well, based on Kafkas's definition, and Kafkas stands for the Children and Family Court Advisory and Support Service, recognise parental alienation as when a child's resistance or hostility towards one parent is not justified and is a result of psychological manipulation by the other parent. It is one of a number of reasons why a child may reject or resist spending time with one parent post-separation. There's a lot more factors to consider when it comes to parental alienation. Mental health, the emotional abuse, the financial abuse, the need for control and power. By stopping a parent or grandparent from seeing a child, stopping siblings from seeing a child, it's power. That the person that's doing it, that's all they want. They want to control the situation. They want to control you. And even though they're not with you, they still want to hold that control over you. I hope this documentary is both educational and inspiring to you, which I hope it leads you wanting to help campaign for change. Thank you.
family, and I was an alienated child. I found out about my biological father at the age of 11. I was brought up by my mum and her husband, who I assumed was my father. And my mum dropped the bombshell one day at the age of 11 and told me that, what would you do if I told you he wasn't your real dad? And I said I wouldn't care, because I didn't like him particularly. There was a lot of physical violence and emotional abuse in the household. So my upbringing was very turbulent and very volatile. So when she told me about my real father, biological father, I was really relieved. In fact, he came over from the States to see me, and she said that I was seeing him the next day. So I was so excited. I was planning on moving to the States with him, and I had all kinds of ideas running through my head. We met in a cafe in town, and I had to take the day off school without my stepfather knowing. I walked into the restaurant, and I just instantly knew who my father was. I just connected with him immediately. I looked just like him, and it was just so nice to actually look like somebody. We had about an hour together, and I cried the whole time, buckets and buckets. And I remember he kept giving me money, and it was dollars back then, pound notes back then, and he kept giving me handfuls of pound notes. And I was confused. I had one hand full of tissue and one handful of pound notes, and I was wiping my eyes with the pound notes. I couldn't stop crying. My mum left us alone for a bit. She went and did some shopping and left me with his wife. And I met my little brother at the time. He was 1, CJ, which was really sweet. But the really confusing thing was that I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody about my experience. I wasn't allowed to have any communication with my dad. We wrote in secret, and family members would come over to the UK to see me, and often film me and take photographs and things like that without my knowledge. So I had to keep this big secret. Even though the physical abuse and the emotional abuse continued, I wasn't allowed to say, "You're not my dad." I really resented my mum for that, because she knew the secret obviously as well, and she allowed these things to continue to happen. I wanted to run away. I wanted to live with my dad. I wanted to go to the States, but obviously I was just a child, so I couldn't. It affected me massively, because at 11 years old, to have this huge secret, especially in the household that I was in, was really traumatic and very confusing. And my behaviour at school was really affected by it, and I played up, and I became a teenage mum actually at 16 years old, and had a child, and I had a second one at 18. We had very little contact between those times, really, just because back then there was no emails or Facebook or anything like that. So any letters that I would get would go through family members, and then I'd have to destroy them. I wasn't allowed to keep them or anything. And one day my stepfather found a letter that I'd hidden to my real father, that I wrote on my new typewriter that I have for Christmas. And when he found it, he beat me and my mum up for doing so. So yeah, it was very challenging to keep such a big secret. But at the same time, it filled me with a lot of hope, because I knew that one day I was going to grow up and get out of that house and be able to form a relationship with my real father. So.
My name is Ruby, and I'm an alienated mother. It all began when I got married in 1997. It was an arranged marriage in Pakistan. My ex-partner came to the UK in May 1998, and he found it quite difficult to adjust to this culture. I gave him time to think he will adjust due to his come from a country where there is no multicultural society. But as time went on, I noticed that everything that he wanted about me was, he wanted to change me, from the friends I had, the way I dressed, or whoever I saw. It started one at a time, and I did not notice, or I was not aware that he was controlling behaviour. I started to change to please him, because I wanted my marriage to work and him to accept me. But before I realised, I had changed so much that I lost myself in it. In 2000, our first child was born, and my hope was that he would calm down and change. But his controlling behaviours continued and continued. I threw all my focus into my children because that kept me going, and it did not trouble me at the time that what he was doing to me or it affected me. In 2005, our youngest child was born. Again, I was a busy mother looking after her children and 100% focused. His controlling behaviours continued to the point that I started to suffer deep depression. My mental health had gone down, and I also started to have sleeping issues. I was too scared to go out and tell anybody what he was doing to me, and I did not disclose this information to friends or family, although he had taken a lot of people out of my life. Looking back at it, I can now see that he made sure there was no one there that I could tell what he was doing to me. So that was very cleverly planned. In 2016, I had had enough. I saw my marriage as four walls with no door opening. I saw that my life was not going anywhere and I was not happy. When I sat him down and told him that I wanted to end the marriage, he did not take it very seriously, because he always thought that I would never have the courage to leave him. One professional pointed out to me to stay in an unhappy marriage for the sake of the children was not the right decision. And children from then having two happy homes was better than having one unhappy home. This made me think that she had a point, that this was the right thing to do, although my instinct told me that I could not carry on with him anymore. He later decided to leave his job and started spending time with the children. I saw it as he was trying to make up time, that where he was always working, he did not have any time to spend with the children. I then later realised that he was alienating them from me before he left with them in 2016, December. The children started to distance themselves from me, and they kept themselves away. And if they had gone out with their father all day, they would not come and disclose to me or share like a normal child would what they had done or where they had gone. Then one morning, suddenly I came back and found him and the children had gone. He had planned this quite carefully, and this was my punishment for leaving a marriage that I was not happy in, and this was my punishment for the rest of my life, that I did not see my children. I put a court case in, and the children were returned to London, and I was given shared custody. But my ex has done everything and anything he can to make sure that I do not have contact with the children. And he throws every obstacle he can to make sure that the children do not bond back with me. The professionals have supported me in this, but I believe until he does not co-parent with me, this is not going to work.
My name is Mark Hegarty, and I'm an alienated father. My daughter's 16 this year, and this year will be the fourth Christmas that I and my family will not spend with my daughter. Her mother and I, we divorced or separated in 2010, and up until May 2016, co-parented very well. My daughter's the most important person in my life. She always has been, and to this day she remains that way. I can remember when she was born, and I fed her a 1 ounce bottle of milk, and she guzzled it straight away. And I remember promising her then that whatever happens in life, I'll always be there for her, and I still am. Unfortunately, I have no relationship with her. When we separated, like I said, we co-parented very well, and my daughter was my best mate. We went on holiday together. We go on a holiday sometimes 2, 3, 4 times a year. You know, so we went to London on our own. Some memories I have of spending time with her, and you know, we always, my life is about making adventures for my daughter. And I remember clearly when it was on Remembrance, for the Remembrance Sunday, where they had a load of poppies outside the Tower of London. I lived in Cardiff at the time, and there were a number of poppies all around the Tower of London. It looked beautiful on television. This was a Friday night, and my daughter said to me, "I'd love to see that." So I said, "Should we go?" And she went, "What? Go, yeah." So I said, "Right, go to bed now, and then we'll go." We got up the next morning, we went to London, we went to see all these properties, fantastic. And it was those kind of things we used to do all the time. I remember I was saying to me, Dad, I'd love to see a waterfall. Right, okay, let's find some waterfalls in Wales. So off we go. And then we went to visit. If you've been to Wales, you should go. It's a great place, and there's lots of waterfalls there. We went there. We'd have. I remember once, for her summer holiday, we made a film. I'll give her the camcorder, and we made a film where she filmed various events throughout the holiday, herself. And then we edited it together. We had a premiere, just me and her. We had popcorn, dressed up, and everything. It's wonderful. We made so many memories together. And we were good. We were really good. She was my best friend. And we had some problems, and we talked openly about those. And I was strong, but I was fair. I wanted her to be open. I wanted her to have a big spirit, and encouraged her to be loud. I didn't want her to be some kind of shrinking violet in the corner. Be loud, be proud. I remember it was really important for me for her to have a Welsh education. And because I wanted her to have the opportunity to learn a second language. And for those of you who don't know, Wales has its own language. And I thought if she could learn at a very early age a second language, then that would set her in good stead for future languages in her life. And education is really important. And I had to fight to get her education. And I did. And she ended up in a fantastic school with the opportunity of a fantastic education. I remember when the Olympics come to London, and the Olympic flame was running past Cardiff. I made sure I collected up a school. We went to see the Olympic flame running past, and I have so many strong memories of my time with her when she was naughty. When she started being unruly, I was the one who'd always say no, and we had a naughty step like most houses up and down the country. But she knew right from wrong, and when we used to clash, no more than anyone else. But then if she was naughty or wrong, then I'd say no, okay, no, you stay in your room. And then she'd always go away and say, and I'd have a little. It started off with little notes, which would say, "I'm sorry," which would be. She went downstairs, write down the note, put it down, then "I'm sorry," and then run back off again and say, "Okay, don't worry, okay, let's move on." So that's what we did. And then as time developed, it would be a text message, "I'm sorry," and it was only when she started, getting into the teenage years, things started changing a little more. And I can remember the very first real bad argument we had, and it was horrible. It was a horrible moment, and I'll never forget it. When she put a face in my face and said, "I hate you," and little did I know, that was when the alienation had started. The trigger point for that, I believe, would be the fact that I was in a relationship, in a good relationship with a wonderful lady who I'm no longer with. And we were seeing each other 18 months before I introduced her to my daughter. We lived in our separate houses. And the setup that we had was that Sunday night, my daughter would spend time with me. Monday night, Tuesday night, and Wednesday I'd take her to school. Then after school on a Wednesday, she would go to her mother's. She spent Wednesday night, Thursday night, and every other Friday I would be with her mother or with me. And then Saturday day would be mine, and then Saturday night she'd go to her mother's and then come back to her Sunday, and it worked well. And that was never broken. I think the relationship I had, the lady never had children, didn't want children, and they met each other a handful of times. But it was in the December of 2015. I remember that she asked her mother to give her some money so she could buy a Christmas present for my girlfriend at the time. And that's when things started to change. Now, I had told my ex that I was in a relationship a long time before that. After 6 months, I told her, just in case, just so she was aware there was an open communication between us. But again, I think she just kind of avoided the issue. But yeah, so, May 2016, that's when my 13-year-old daughter decided She hated me and she never wanted to see me again. And as I'm talking to you now today, this is November 2019, the hate my daughter has for me has grown and grown and grown. I don't blame her for that whatsoever. I never knew what parental alienation was. And it took me around about 18 months to actually discover what parental alienation was. Until recently, until it happens to you, you've never heard of the term. I can tell you it's real. I can tell you it's damaging. I can tell you it's actually changed my life and it nearly killed me.
I'm Lorraine Bushell and I'm an alienated grandmother. 18 years ago, to great excitement, my twin grandsons were born. I went to the hospital to see them and my son was very happy to see me and my husband. But my daughter-in-law was somewhat, how can I put it, not friendly at all, which I found quite strange. The next day I went back to the hospital and my daughter-in-law said to me, "Don't touch the baby." And it felt like a knife going through my heart. I wasn't allowed to touch either of the babies. I didn't know why, I couldn't understand. And then one of the nurses came to see me and she said, "What's that on your lip?" And I said, "Actually, it's nothing, it's just a scar." And my daughter-in-law somehow thought that I had a cold sore on my face, which I didn't. And 18 years on, I've never heard the word grandma. There's another child now who's 12, a little girl. My son hasn't ever brought the children to my home on his own. I've asked him numerous times. The boys are now at university. I'm not allowed to make contact with them. I have tried. I think that it was just a tragedy being alienated like this. My late husband and I, we had 5 children, and these were the only grandchildren. So it has been a most terrible journey. It's very, very difficult to cope, especially when I see my friends talking about their lovely grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So what can I really say? I don't think I'm a bad person, but I think my grandchildren have now been poisoned against me. And this is a very sad thing. At that point, when the children were born, I was verging on a nervous breakdown. I've sadly had a nervous breakdown before. I really felt that I was becoming very, very ill because I had other things going on in my life at the same time. So I do fully understand what it is to be an alienated grandmother.
Being an alienated child affected me and my relationships in that it made me become a better mum, I think, because I was very conscious about what my child needed because I didn't have what I needed. So when I became a mum to my first child at 16, although I was very inexperienced and young, I knew that my child needed to have me and her dad around. And he was 15 at the time as well. So we were both babies, having babies. And but I was very aware and conscious that the fact that her father needed to be in her life. And I wanted to give her, I didn't have much, but I wanted to give her that. And so as I was raising my first child, I got pregnant with a second at 18. And it was kind of my get out of jail card, really, because I had to leave the family home then, which was a relief to me. But my mother tried to prevent it by making me have an abortion. because she wanted to take ownership of my first child, which I wouldn't allow her to have. And I finally moved out. Craig and I, the father, we had a good relationship, although we were still teenagers. We had a lot of issues. He didn't know his father either. So there were times when I alienated him from the girls, because if he didn't turn up on time, or if he didn't have them, or he'd let me down, when we were back and forth quite often as teenagers. But I would hear my children on the phone to their dad, and it would break my heart, the fact that, you know, especially my youngest one, she was obsessed with her dad, and it would break her heart that she didn't see him or speak to him. So I just realised that it's not my relationship, it's their relationship, and it's not mine to own. So, you know, it would only happen for a few weeks, but even so, it taught me a lot about how important his presence was in their lives, especially as girls, I think. My relationship with my mum deteriorated massively because the physical violence didn't stop there. It continues in front of my children, and I just put a stop to that relationship. We don't speak. I haven't spoken to my mum properly for 20-something years. So I raised my girls alone, really. Craig has always been around, but I did most of the work and the emotional labour, if you like. So not having your mum to guide you, or to have extended family, because I was kind of ostracised from my family then, because I wouldn't speak to my mum. My grandmother didn't speak to me for a good 12 years, which broke my heart because we were very close. But obviously she was taking the side of her daughter. That relationship repaired, and we were fantastic, you know, very, very close. But my relationships in terms of potential partners was hindered massively because I didn't want my children to have stepfathers. So I'd have frequent boyfriends that were short term. I was scared of anyone getting involved in my girls. So it was a very separate relationship, which is difficult to do when you're a single mum. I was very aware that Craig was that important to my children's life, that he was involved in everything. It was as if we were still together. Lots of people thought we were still together, because he was so actively involved in our lives. And I put that before anything, any relationship. So in my personal life, that suffered, but my girls came first, and their stability was more important to me than my future, I guess. So yeah, my relationship with my family broke down massively because I kind of turned my back on my mum, and I had a brother as well with the stepfather, and my mum had a son called Leon, who we were inseparable as children. But when all this was revealed, when I was 11, it just tore us apart. He was devastated that I wasn't his real sister, and we've never regained closeness ever since. So I kind of did it alone, just got on with it with my girls. And when I went to America to see my dad at 21, the relationship he had with his wife is just amazing. She's such a wonderful lady, and I've got 3 brothers over there as well. And I had the best time. We did things as a family, which I'd never done before, with my mum and my stepfather. We had a fantastic Christmas, and which is everything that I think family is about, just being together and being connected and sharing memories and making memories. It was just amazing. It was one of the best experiences of my life. So my relationship now with my mum is still that we don't speak. She's desperate to connect with me, but there's so much hostility from the past that she will not accept. She's quite narcissistic in the fact that she denies anything ever happened to me as a child, but I remember so much. She's unable to take accountability or even apologise, which is almost like the abuse happening over and over again. And I think if she could just apologise and acknowledge what I went through, then maybe there could be a connection there. But until that happens, I just can't see us ever reconnecting as mother and daughter ever again, which is really sad for her and is sad for me. But I've learned to get on with it, and I find myself and my self-awareness through the eyes of my dad, whose opinion of me matters more than anybody. He's very encouraging. He, gives me really positive affirmations. My mum is very negative and very critical. So within my relationship with my mother, that's something that's never going to be resolved. But I continue to have a relationship with my father, which is one that sustains me. And I just think that you need to look at people and you see yourself through the eyes of others, through your parents. And my father's a good person, which reminded me and told me that I can be a good person, and that, being a teenage mum wasn't shameful. It happened, and I think I've done a good job. So I'm very proud of myself. And my girls and I are very close. They still have a relationship with their father. Craig and I were very, very close up until he had a new relationship. And it's not that we're not close. He's like a brother to me, but I just stepped back because of the sake of his new relationship. But I still see his mum on a regular occasion. She's amazing. And I feel that Craig and his mum, my family, and I wouldn't change a thing.
During the marriage, when we used to go out to see family and friends, he wasn't a very sociable person, but with immediate family, there were functions that he had to attend. He was a total different character. He'll be out there relaxed, laughing, joking. And I used to stand there and watch and say, this is not the man that I know. And he's not like that behind closed doors. But everyone loved him because it was the side he showed to them, not the real one, but the split personality of him. And everyone would come up to me and say how lucky I was, that how happy he looks. He was very funny. He was a family person. But this was all an act, because when we'd come home, it was a different story. He would criticise me to who I had spoken to during the function, who had come to sit next to me. And during the functions, I would not enjoy myself knowing what it would lead to when we got home. So it was very shocking when family actually found out from myself what he was doing behind closed doors. A lot of the time I felt people didn't believe me. They thought I was imagining, I was going crazy, or something was wrong with me, not him. And that was quite hard to accept, that I was trying to tell people the real character of him. It took time, but they were able to understand, especially when he took the children. It was really hard because he started to isolate me from my friends and a lot of the relatives that I was in contact. I'm a people's person, he wasn't. And he felt very jealous when he saw people in my life, people who cared for me and wanted to contact me. I started to distance myself. I made excuses why I didn't want to see people when they invited me over or they wanted to come over, but I did not tell them the real reason was that he did not like them around, because again, I was too scared. For them to believe me and for me to actually come out and say things, it started to affect my everyday life. Stress, chronic headaches, couldn't sleep all night, depression, emotion. One day I would be emotional, the next day I'll be like, again, sometimes I could not even connect with my emotions because they were so all over the place at times. It affected everyday life because one day was not the same to the other. I would think about it all day long. It would always play on my mind if he had said something to me after an event and I couldn't get it out of my head, so the same thing would play round and round in my head. I felt like at times I was going crazy. I couldn't cope. It was especially when I couldn't tell anybody and I just had to keep it all inside. Bottling it all, I think it started to affect my emotional well-being. I looked in the mirror, I did not recognise who I was. I felt like an actress out there because I would walk out my house and pretend I was happy, play like an actress. But when I'd come home, I saw the real me in the mirror and I started to say, Ruby, who are you? I don't recognise you. And that is where I started to think hard about that I need to do something about this situation, and then I cannot carry on because it has affected me so much to the point that even I felt sometimes that I didn't have time for the children or the patients that I wanted to have because I was trying to deal with my emotions, or if I wanted to have a good cry at night, make sure the children weren't watching me. But I had to protect them as well, on top of try to cope with my own emotions. It was very hard. It was very, very hard to cope with. With all the illnesses that started to follow, my GP would ask me what was wrong, and I would say, no, nothing, everything is fine in my life. And she would find it very, very hard to believe, but I felt that I couldn't tell anybody, that nobody would believe me, and the words would not come out of my mouth. And that's where I felt trapped and stuck. and isolated.
Parental alienation absolutely changed my life. The relationship I had with my daughter, my daughter is the most important person in my life, and she'll always be that way. There's no stronger love than a parent and their child. There's no stronger love. It's a different kind of love with a relationship, you know, with a wife or with a husband or with a partner or whatever. It's completely different. A father or a mother and a child's relationship there's nothing like it. When that's taken away from you, life changes, and my life changed gradually. My life changed overnight. You know, from not seeing my daughter at 13 saying she didn't want to see me again. You know, well, it's difficult to put in words how it was like, but in terms of how it affected me, it could have gone two ways. At the time, I had a great job. You know, earned quite a bit of money. You know, always. My daughter always had whatever she wanted, and you know, the holidays I spoke about. You know, come through sort of hard work. I wanted to be successful because I wanted to be a good role model for my daughter. So when that went, I lost a part of me, and like I said, it changed my life. And I'm always being a half-empty guy, and I can tell you now that my world collapsed. My world absolutely collapsed. It caved in. I didn't know. To be honest, the first 18 months, I just walked around in a fucking haze because I don't know what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. In hindsight, I've learned that I was depressed. And I was working in Cardiff. I lived in Cardiff and I worked in Bristol. I used to drive to Bristol every day. And I remember, I don't really want to go on about the disagreements with the mother because that's it's kind of irrelevant. But I remember that the CSA, or the people that collected money or whatever they're called, CSM, they wanted to charge me £163 a week for my daughter, based on earnings from a job that's from a business that went into administration 9 months before. I'd only just started a job and I'd lost, you know, I was losing money, I was in debt, I was in a right old mess, and they were ringing me 2-3 times a day. I tried to speak to my daughter's mother, but she said, I don't care, I'm not speaking to you. Well, let's put it in the hands of those people. Whatever they say is what we'll abide by. So £163 a week. I remember freewheeling down hills because I didn't have enough petrol to get home. It was a nightmare, absolute nightmare. And I remember when I was driving to Bristol, just this thought, and I'll never forget, I thought, if I just stop the car here, pull over to the hard shoulder, just jump over there, then fuck it, everything would be over. Everything would be over. And do you know what? I fucking nearly stopped that car. And to this day, I can still see myself doing that. No, that's not me. That's not me. I didn't. Something stop me from doing it. Thank God that I didn't. I'm one of the fucking lucky ones. Right? I didn't do that. And I remember, just after that, I thought, right, okay, let's get fit. So I trained, I ran. I remember, I forget the endorphins going. I did the Swansea half marathon. And I collapsed at the end of it. I spent 3 days in hospital with a suspected heart attack, right? And my daughter didn't even come to see me in hospital. And when I emailed her afterwards, she was told, I knew there was nothing wrong with you. 13 years of age, and she knew there was nothing wrong with me. You know, I didn't know what was wrong with me. I was scared. For the first time I was scared. I felt, you know, this is it. You know, I thought, I can't leave this earth without the relationship. Just disaster. Awful. And then my parents saw this really loud, confident, boisterous guy turn into a crumbling wreck. That's what I was, a crumbling wreck. My relationship with, you know, the girlfriend, it ended because I was just in a fucking daze. I didn't know what I was doing. Just walking around in a daze. I didn't want to, I hated myself. I hated everything. I didn't want to speak to anyone. I just woke up in the morning, I go to work, I come home in work, and I remember, I lost a significant amount of weight. And I remember I had a fantastic boss who who employed me on the condition that I could only go to Bristol every time day, but I had to take my daughter to work and I had to have late starts. And when that went, they saw me just deteriorate in front of them. And then my parents could see the effect that it was having on me. It made them ill. They just saw me deteriorate, and it was a really, really, really bad time. A really, really, really bad time. And I can't say that I'm glad I've been there, but it made me sort of reevaluate everything. It made me reevaluate myself. It made me reevaluate my life. And sometimes you got to dance with the devil to move on. You can go one way or the other way. And thankfully, I went the right way. But I'm telling you, I could have gone the other way. And there's so many people I know that aren't as fortunate as I am.
Being cut off from the grandchildren is just the worst thing imaginable. As I mentioned before, other friends showing photographs of their wonderful grandchildren. If I want to see my grandchildren, I have to go on my son's Facebook page. So this has affected me very, very badly. I don't sleep well. I'm quite irritable at times. And my daughter also is not allowed to see the children. She's absolutely heartbroken, mainly because she has no children of her own. And she would love to be involved with the children and their lives, be able to visit them. I think that the children have missed out because they would have had a fantastic grandmum and step-granddad. Sadly, I lost my husband 2 years ago. So this is yet, unfortunately, another tragedy in my life. So I would say that this has affected me very, very badly. And I know about other grandparents who really become desperately ill and lonely. Loneliness is just a terrible thing, especially times like Christmas, when you see all the families together going out having fun, and you're not even allowed to be part of the grandchildren's lives or your son's life. And mainly in my case, it's my daughter-in-law. I think at one point my son said to me, I didn't expect things to turn out like this. For my son, I think he's walking on eggshells. I hope very much that he's happy, that he's enjoying his life, and I hope my grandchildren are happy, that they have friends. I just feel that they missed out on the love and the security and the bonding which they could have had with me and with my family, because I have a really big family. Nobody knows the children. It's just the saddest thing.
As far as I'm aware, I don't recall social services ever being involved in my family. The police were often called to a lot of the family disturbances that went on. So they may have been, I don't recall any encounter with them, but I do remember speaking to teachers because I became quite volatile in school. I was a very quiet child and very inward. But obviously the things I was experiencing at home in the evening, I would go to school, that the night before there would have been violence going on, stabbings even, and I'd have to go to school and act as if everything was okay. So I remember confiding in the teacher once because I became quite aggressive and I had a fight at school. And she was so shocked by my behaviour because I was a very quiet child and I loved schoolwork and I really, really threw myself into anything academic. But obviously I had a lot of issues going on and I was quite troubled, carrying all these different secrets that I had. So I remember confiding in a teacher, and the teacher wanted to investigate further and speak to my parents, which I was really reluctant to do because I knew that there would be a backlash. So I don't remember, I didn't have any counselling as a child. I have had counselling as I got older, just because I realised that I hadn't dealt with a lot of things. You know, I became a mum very young, so I was on autopilot, and I didn't really have any self-care for myself. So now and again, I would kind of stoop into a depression and get quite low. I couldn't really function. But then there were the times when I was really high and motivated, and I'm very entrepreneurial, so I would be so motivated by the things I was doing. But in my personal life, with my inner emotions, there were a lot of unresolved issues and unresolved anger and resentment and disappointments that I think sometimes came to the surface, particularly in relationships. So when those occasions happened, I'm very self-aware, and I would take myself to counselling. And it was always a conversation about my childhood. It was always a conversation about my father and the alienation and how that affected me. Just the general feeling of lack of support and lack of having a family to turn to. You know, raising 2 kids on your own is difficult because I wanted to do everything perfect and to be the best mum I could. So I was always kind of knocking down barriers that were there. You know, my children went to private school. I had businesses from a young age. I bought a house at 23. I didn't know how to do those things. I had nobody to give me an example of what that looked like. I just knew I had to do it for my kids. So yeah, it was really, really difficult. But I just soldiered on, and then I would just crash and burn sometimes emotionally, and I'd need some help. I was diagnosed with having manic depression when I was a lot younger, but I just think that was a period in my life because I've never experienced anything like it since. So I don't know if that's related to unaddressed emotions, or if it is something that I've kind of counselled myself through, but I'm definitely stronger, and I'm very aware of the circumstances and very aware of my emotions, and I just know how to get myself out of those moments now. So
I acted as solicitor, and we put in an emergency hearing C100, and there was a risk that the children would be taken out of the country. So to protect them, I wanted to put in a prohibited steps order that he was not allowed to remove them. We went to the court, to family court, and on the day we had an emergency hearing where a prohibited steps order was given and the C100 application was heard. After that, we were given a month later, the proceedings started. All professionals and the judges have been in my favour because they have gone through the whole process and seen where he has split up, and he paid a private social worker to make up a report which did not go in his favour at all. The children's, the CAFCAS, the children's guardian, the solicitor, and the social worker, Section 7 reports were done, Section 37 reports were done, and also the court ordered a psychologist report, which was quite a big in-depth report. All came out with the same conclusion, that they feel that the parental alienation is happening, and that has come on paper. Also, the interesting bit is that the children repeat the same sentences that their father has said, and the information that they have is adult related. It's not a child would not come to know this information unless it was given to them. So that was the interesting part, as professionals to pick up and see, that's, you know, something isn't right here. A child will not come out and start talking about financial stuff, or, you know, something that it's not related to them. And this is where it was all picked up, that some of the information the children were giving to the professionals was repeated, and some of them felt it was rehearsed. So all this information was very interesting to see on paper, and to take it to court and have these reports submitted. Everyone can see through it. There is not even one professional. I have great respect for them in that sense, that they have hit it to the nail. But now the point we have reached is, where do we go next? How do we deal with this? Because parental alienation is ongoing. It is happening. Professionals also have reported that my ex, with the child sitting there, they started to badmouth me, talk about me in a way that they feel is not appropriate for a child to hear about their mother. And obviously they do feel that this is affecting the children, and that is why their healths are deteriorating at the moment, and they're having mental health issues because of the fact that their father keeps bad-mouthing their mother in front of them. The professionals are in my favour. They are on board with what's going on. The full-on story is happening. When we are in court, everything is gone in my favour as well. But we have reached to the point, okay, we've got an issue. Parental alienation is happening. What are we going to do about it next? That is a step where I have reached, but I don't know what the next solution is to this problem or what the professionals will come out with.
Okay, so in terms of how industry professionals, my interaction with industry professionals, that's a strange one for me, because before the alienation took place, in fact, I got a letter here. In 2012, my daughter's mother, I'm not going to labour on about it, was having some challenges, and social services contacted me saying that I had to go for sole custody of my daughter. Now, my ex was having some challenges at the time, and I knew that if I did that, and I actually said that to them, it's going to push her over the edge, and she could end up trying to harm herself again, like she had previously. And I did not want my daughter to grow up without a mother. Dreadful thing to say. So wish they come back to me, and I understand now that they were doing what they had to do. And they said, well, if that's the case, then we have an issue, because that was saying that I would willingly put my daughter, who at the time, 2012, what was that? I guess she was 7 years of age. I willingly put my 7-year-old under the full-time supervision of somebody who was in recovery. And that would be neglect on my behalf. So we had a conversation which ended up in they saying, if I could guarantee that the time with her mother would be supervised, then they would be willing to close the case. So what I had to do, and I spoke to her about this, I spoke to her parents about this, who would be doing the supervising, so we wouldn't have to go to any of these fucking contact centres or anything like that, which just made her recovery even worse. It would be in a confined zone house. So my daughter was unaware of all this and just could carry on growing up, being young and being happy. And so we agreed, and I got the letter here. So I said to them that I would arrange for a solicitor's letter to be sent to her and to her mother, confirming the arrangements. 4th December 2012. It's been instructed by our above client in relation to children's matters. We understand this letter will not likely come as a surprise to you. Our client has followed the advice of Children's Services at this time and sought legal advice in relation to the care of my daughter. We understand you have long-standing issues with depression and alcohol dependence, for which you're presently seeking assistance. Despite our client's concern, he does not intend to make an application to the court for a formal order in respect of residence at this time. Our client trusts you will use this letter as motivation to seek the help that you will need to make a full recovery in order to allow matters to return to the previous arrangement of shared care. So the bit I missed out there is that we also understand the result of these issues. A daughter is to reside with our client, and that your contact is to be on a supervised basis. So by doing that, they close the case. Fantastic. For me, fantastic. So, fast forward 3 years. 3 years, wow. Fast forward 3 years, and then my daughter's 13. Now, I can't make my daughter love me. My daughter is the victim of this. You know, there's one person in the world, the only other person in the world who loves my daughter as much as me is a mother. And if it pleases, if she, whatever the situation is between her and mother, I don't know, I know her mother loves her deeply. But I didn't know, I don't know how to handle this. I'm not going to throw money at taking it to court, because if it goes to court, I can't force a 13-year-old daughter to come with me. I can't do that. A mother can help, but that's what we needed, was help. And there's been no help. And it's just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And there is nothing whatsoever I can do. There's no help. There's nowhere for me to go to. The only help that I got was from reading and from understanding and getting compassion and empathy from people who've been in the situation. But I had to seek out that help. Now, as I understood what parental alienation is, well, again, I found that out myself. And then I sort of created this whole world of people who were, like me, suffering. All over the world, people are suffering. And then I saw that there are some incredible people who do some incredible things. But the fight to see that this is real. What I'm going through here is real. This is real. I can fucking tell you this is real. Every single day of my life, the first thing I think about is my daughter. The last thing I think about is my daughter. And I don't see her. My father's fighting cancer. He's in hospital. I send an email to my daughter. My daughter didn't go and see me in hospital. Now, what kind of industry professional can make that right? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. But then, if you tell me the parental alienation isn't real, what's that? How can we have a fantastic relationship, a wonderful relationship, and all of a sudden she hates me? Hates me more and more and more and more. We don't teach kids hate. They're not born with hate. But yeah, she's got this hate. I don't know why. Don't know why.
I've had contact with solicitors. I will name them because they're very, very good, and perhaps somebody out there would like to make contact with them. So, Vanessa Lloyd Platt from Divorce Lawyers. She is a high-profile solicitor. She is greatly behind everyone in this situation because she comes across it often when she deals with divorce, and she has the grandparents broken-hearted coming to see her. Vanessa wants a change in the law, but we have to come to that from the grandchildren's point of view. The other solicitor is a lady called Vicky Priest, and she's from IBB Solicitors. And again, she's done a documentation concerning alienated grandparents. I've been in touch with my MP, who is Matthew Offord, MP for the Barnet area, and Nigel Huddleston, MP from North Worcestershire, both of whom are very much behind this cause. I've also been writing to Lord David Blanket, a family man, and I was hoping he could raise this question in the House of Lords. So these are mainly the professionals, apart from perhaps GPs, psychotherapists. To be honest, nothing really helps. This is my situation, it's my pain. And however hard you try to speak to other people, the pain never leaves you.
Okay, so in order to cope with parental alienation, I absolutely had to look at my life. I'm lucky. I'm one of the lucky ones. I learnt. Well, let me go back. The year before my daughter was alienated from me, in a previous life I used to sing and write songs, and I was inspired. It was on my birthday. 2014. My daughter was with me. We were waiting for my parents to join us for a meal on holiday. And the way my father looked at my mother was just incredible. It was just an absolute look of love. And you thought, God, for 50 years, you know, he's still looking at her like he's, you know, madly and deeply in love with her. And I thought, right, for their birthday, for their 50th anniversary, I'm going to write a song. I'm going to record a song. And I did it, and I got in touch with a load of all my friends. I wrote the song, recorded the song, and then for their 50th wedding anniversary, which my daughter came to, we performed the song. My dad was actually in the toilet at the time when I was giving a big speech about it, but that's another story. So when all this, the alienation happened to me, and like I said before, I was in a mess. I started writing songs just to help me deal with that pain. Because I learned, I was introduced to mindfulness. I was introduced to self-care. Why would you want to come back to you if you're crying all the time, if you're miserable, if you're unhappy? Why would she come back? I realized I needed to be the best version of me that I can be. I was doing a job that I hated, and is that a good example to my daughter? Do something that I don't like? No. So I started writing songs initially just to help me get shit out, just to deal with them, just to help me sort of, you know, acknowledge what I was doing. And I'm lucky that I've got some good friends who are great musicians, and we turned these into songs. And I started playing these songs, and people seemed to like them. And the first song that I wrote that I'm going to sing for you, it was Slate of Fortune, where I acknowledged that I have absolutely no control over this situation, because the first Christmas that I had was the hardest Christmas that I've ever faced. You can't even begin to imagine what it's like when you spent 12 Christmases with your daughter and then you don't see her. You know, it was just awful. So I wrote a song called Slate of Fortune, and subsequently I've written a lot more songs and make a lot of videos. Every time I go through something, these videos seem to resonate with other people who go through the same thing. So so I sang this song actually in outside Downing Street to commemorate Global Parental Alienation Awareness Day in April of this year. Let me sing it to you now. It's like I said, it's accepting that, you know, the things are changing. I miss being a father. I really miss being a father. I can't tell how much I miss being a father every day. And it's out of my hands. You know, I just want my daughter to know that I love her. And the irony about this track is I recorded it with a children's choir. Anyway, called Slate of Fortune. I miss being your dad. It really makes me sad. Except that things are changing, memories are fading of the good things that we had. I don't know how you look, don't know what you like. Are you doing well in school? Hope everything is cool. You're always on my mind. I think about you every day. I've learned to hide away the pain. I know that you are safe and well. I pray in time that you'll come to tell me. When I break it down, I'm a slave to fortune. Can't control everything I see. light, I still believe. Who's your best friend now? I hope you're being kind. Blue skies will appear, knowing that you're near. You're always on my mind. I think about you every day. I've learned to hide away the pain. I know that you were seven well. I pray in time that you'll come to tell me. When I break it down, I'm a slave to fortune. Can't control everything I see. When I break it down, I'm a slave to fortune. While there's lights, I still believe. When I break it down, I'm a slave to fortune. Can't control everything I see. Yes, I've broken down, I'm a slave to fortune. While there's lights, I still believe. While there's light, I still believe. I don't know how you look, don't know what you like. I guess you've made your story, but I miss being your time.
At the beginning, it was really, really hard. I was an emotional wreck. I was not myself. I was falling to pieces. I was crying days in, day out. I wasn't eating anything. I just laid there. People tried to support me, but them being here or not here did not make any difference to me at all. I just did not want to face the world because I thought as soon as I go out and someone will ask me how you are, I'll burst out crying, and I just felt, it's not right. I was afraid actually to go back and step outside my house, not realising when am I going to start crying, because I was constantly crying behind my four walls. Got to the point that I realised that if I wanted to fight for my children, I had to get myself together, because he wanted to show that I was crazy. I'm not crazy. I wanted to, it woke me up to say that if this is how I presented myself, and it was a long fight I was going into, and I had to make sure that I looked and I pulled myself together for the sake of the children, because I had to remind myself that I had to stay strong if I'm going to fight for them. And if I represented myself like that, it would have come across and he would have said, look, I've told you she's crazy. So that gave me a wake-up call. I got myself together. I said to myself, I have to do this and I have to be strong, because if I'm not strong, how am I going to fight this? It's not an easy journey. It's a very, very difficult one. I started to eat well again. I started to look after myself a bit more. I started to slowly step out of my door and see. There were bad days and there were good days, but if I could manage a little bit outside, I would do it. So throughout the year, the court cases were going on. From the beginning, I was very, very stressed out, because going to court a day before would be really bad for me. But then as time went on, I started to relax myself and again reminded myself again, what was my reason to go out there? Why was I fighting? Because I had to show that I'm strong. He was trying to point out that I'm a bad mother. I'm not a bad mother. I was a good mother to my children. And as time went on, I started to look after myself, and a year later I decided to go back into work. I had stopped working in 2005 when I had my younger child, because my ex didn't want me to go back to work, therefore I stayed at home and took care of the children. I went into work and I realised, what could I do? And I suddenly came to my head, my love for children. I decided to apply for a job in school. To my delight, I got the job. And for me to spend my day with the children, I think it eases my pain. This is how I cope. I cuddle hundreds of children every day, and that gives me comfort because I'm very, very fond of children. And having children around me all day, I think it keeps me going. And I enjoy being around children, and the love they give me and the hugs I receive every day are my comfort, are my strength. So going back to work and start to build another job. So at the moment I'm full on. I keep myself so busy with my work that is how I cope with my ongoing parental alienation and the court case and everything.
Years ago, when all of this started, I didn't know another single person who was in my situation. So I rang a helpline. At that point, it was called the Grandparents Association. And I spoke to somebody who understood what I was talking about. They were very helpful. It does help to speak to other people in the same situation. I then went on to do a counselling course, and I thought, I'm going to start a group myself. And I put up a few posters, a few leaflets, I went on the radio. This was in the West Midlands, and I started a group in Solihull. Just 1 or 2 people came at the beginning, but then the group really grew, and perhaps I would have as many as 20 people coming, and I heard the most terrible stories. I heard about suicide, I heard about GBH, about drug abuse, imprisonment. I think I've heard it all. I heard about children who were fostered or adopted. This would make 100 books, not just a book. So I then thought to myself, I don't know of a group in London, and I researched this and there wasn't a group in London. So I started a group in London. I think that would have been about 8 or even 10 years ago. I've lost track of time. And again, the group grew and grew. I had various speakers coming down to my group, which I run in Hendon. It's the Hendon Grandparents Support Group. And a couple of years ago, I ran a lobby day in Parliament. I was very lucky because Dame Esther Ranson agreed to come and speak, and also Vanessa Lloyd-Platt came and spoke. I had MPs, lots of MPs came in, and 2 years on, we haven't got anywhere. I know when Tony Blair was part of the Labour government, he was going to get rid of this thing called asking for leave to go to court, but then the government changed and that didn't happen, because you can't go directly to court. You have to ask for leave or permission first of all to go to court, and it's a hugely expensive business and doesn't always have the result that you actually need. In September last year, I ran an action day, and I had more than 60 grandparents come along. We had speakers, we had MPs, and we really started pushing for a change in the law. So, in fact, what we're going to do in May, hopefully on May the 14th, I'm going to invite 500 grandparents from all over the UK to come along, to talk, to listen, to lobby, to take action. I really feel that we need to get some changes in the law, and I want to reach out to all those alienated grandparents out there. Please, contact me. You'll find me and send me an email. I try not to talk too much on the phone because I find it totally exhausting and so sad listening to everybody's stories. But let's get a huge group of grandparents coming. This is going to be a lot of work, but we'll get publicity, we'll get the MPs really listening, and who knows, with the new government, we might finally succeed and be able to see our grandchildren.
So when I was younger, the way I coped with the alienation, if I go back to my teenage years actually, I didn't cope very well. I was kind of acting out in school. And then when I became a mum, I focused all my energy and time on my girls, and just trying to be the best mum that I possibly could. I didn't have an example of a good one. I just knew if I did everything opposite, then I should be okay. The way I cope with it now is that I realise that what you go through in life is not meant for you, is meant for others. So I'm no longer a victim. I'm a survivor of a situation that was put on myself, but it's up to me to use it for the benefit of the people. So I busy myself with being involved in charities that deal with parental alienation. I'm studying at the moment, and my whole focus and degree is kind of centred around family and separation. So the way I'm coping with it is to try and make sure that this doesn't happen to other people by bringing awareness.
The advice that I would give to people going through the similar situations is to reach out to support groups, speak to family and friends. Don't stay silent, because that's where I went wrong. I was quiet, I wouldn't talk to anybody, and this continued for a very long time. Even throughout my marriage, I was experiencing controlling behaviours. The sign is that they belittle you, they disrespect you, they try to put you down. And this is the way they continue. They start off like that, but they continue and continue until they can't push you any further. Don't stay quiet. Don't suffer in silence. I suffered for so long. Prior to the separation, the parental alienation started 6 months, and I noticed that the children's behaviours towards me, where they would respect me, listen to me, or come to me for anything they wanted, they started to distance themselves. For example, my child did not want to go to school one morning for no apparent reason, because they knew the rules. If you have temperature, diarrhoea or vomiting, and these were the only reasons that school was, you would stay off school. I had said that they had to go to school, but their father had turned around and said they didn't need to. They play you up. They start to make you look like the bad cop, and they're the good cop, because you're trying to still encourage your child to do the right thing. But that's not their mission. Their mission is to make the child now to disrespect you. Exactly what he did to me. I started to see the same thing the children started to do to me. So my advice to you would be that it doesn't start overnight, parental alienation. There's a pattern. And I started to notice it prior, slowly, every day something new was happening. The children, I was isolated from the children, living in the same house, but they were kept away from me. He would make sure that he was always with them and they were not speaking to me alone, just in case if there's something he has told them, they would spill it out to me. So please, my advice is don't suffer in silence. Get out there. There are support groups out there. Speak to family, speak to friends, because they want us to suffer in silence, and that is their mission. But we're not going to do that. We are going to go out there, raise our voice on what we are going through. It's a tough process, parental alienation. It's not easy. Some days you just have the will to give up. Some days you feel, I can't do this anymore. But you have to keep reminding yourself, yes, there's good days and there's bad days, but you've got to continue. Speak up, become a voice, and don't suffer in silence. Together, we have to stop parental alienation. This is a widespread issue at the moment, but there's not enough people coming forward and not coming up and saying that this is happening to me. It's nothing to be afraid of. To share your story, to share your experience.
What I'd advise other people, other grandparents going through this trauma, understand that you're not alone. For me, this seems like an epidemic. A lot of people don't come forward and tell you what's going on. But it's easier to speak to others in the same situation. Look for a group in your area. If there isn't one, think about starting a group. If you have a look at the Bristol Grandparent Support Group, they have a really good website and all the groups available are listed on there. So how are you going to cope with this situation? Remember, you only have one life. It's just impossible sometimes to rebond with the grandchildren. Enjoy your life. Enjoy what you have left of it. Join a U3A. Go and learn something new. Look after your health. Don't let them succeed in bringing you down. Hold your head up high. It's not your fault. It's definitely not you. I know people say, oh, you must have done something. You know, you must have said something. And I also advise you, if you think perhaps you are going to be cut off from your loved ones, you tread on eggshells and you grovel. And if they tell you don't feed the children, don't give them chocolates, don't do this, don't do that, okay, so what? Don't do it. Don't become an alienated grandmother.
I think that family is the fabric of society, and the governments need to take more attention and time into being involved in families. And one way they can do that is when they register the birth. That could be a gateway for an opportunity for people to realise that there's support out there for new parents. Maybe when the family is starting to break down and issues are arising with the new child, obviously cause a lot of strain in relationships. So I think the government needs to be more proactive in offering family support and reconciliation. There's too much work going on with family courts, and they're kind of more inclined to help the breakup of family rather than the reconnecting and reconciliation of a family. I think it's really, really important for anybody that's going through a family breakdown to consider the children's mental health and well-being and their identity. You don't own the child. It's blessed to you. It's not something that you own and you take ownership of, and you have the right to make decisions for that child in terms of his contact with the other parent. Obviously there are caveats if there's violence involved, and that's different, but I think that mums in particular need to take accountability for their emotions during a relationship breakdown, because it's always centred around a lot of disappointment and a lot of heartache that you make these decisions, and you think that by keeping the father away it's going to hurt him or get him back for something that he's done, or even vice versa, the man for the woman. But 90% of the women take ownership of the child, and I think if there are more support networks out there for people to understand their emotions whilst they're going through breakdown, and if they do focus on the best interest of the child, then they will take their selfishness away from using the child as a tool and as a pawn. Anybody going through it as a child, I would just say that stay strong and just remember who you are, remember the time that you did have connection with the other parent, and talk to the parent that you live with as well. Just express how it makes you feel not having connection with the other parent, tell them how lost it makes you feel, or how you know that you need that person in your life because it helps you form who you are. I know you can't articulate that as a child, but I think if children felt comfortable to be able to speak to their parents about some of the effects and issues that they go through, then maybe the parent will listen. I certainly did when I heard my daughter breaking her heart on the phone to her dad. It really, really resonated with me that it's not my job to keep them away from each other. So there are lots of support groups out there now. Fathers are getting more attention in terms of their alienation, and groups are forming, united and coming together. And I think government is starting to take notice, particularly with Both Parents Matter and other organisations like that. They're realising that society is unravelling with mental health issues, homelessness, all these other issues that affect society. If you go back to the very core of every single one of them, there's always a family issue at the centre of it. So I think government is starting to realise and recognise that they have to start from the basis, and which is the foundation of family. So I would say if you're going through anything like this, seek some advice, because it can feel very isolating, like you're the only one going through it. But this is happening more frequently now, and just seek some advice, seek out one of those groups, get some emotional support, and then get some legal support. and understand what your rights actually are, and keep fighting. Don't give up. Keep fighting. Don't get hostile. Don't get vindictive. Remain humble and just come from the position of you're here and your intention is for your child, not to get one upon the other parent. That's really, really important, because the judge can see through that as well, and it doesn't look good for you in court if you have that kind of attitude. But the judge just wants to know what's your plan and what would it look like to have a relationship with your child, and just focus on what the best interest of that child is, and try and keep your emotions about the other person aside, and just keep going, keep fighting.
Okay, advice. What advice would I give to someone? My situation is out of my hands. So all I can do is tell you what I do. You know, what I've said is I want to be the best version of me. I want to be able to, hopefully, one day my daughter's going to come back to me and say, you know, crikey, he led a good life. My father led a good life. He does some nice things. He's true to himself, and be a good example to her. And I'm actually, the irony of parental alienation is that I'm leading a life that is a good life, a really good life. Haven't got any money, but you know, that doesn't matter. I'm doing stuff that I love, and I think that I'm making a difference. But I'm lucky because I've got that creative outlet, and not everyone has. But like I said, it took me 18 months to find out what parental alienation was, and I am absolutely, utterly determined to get this out, to get parental alienation out there. Talk about it. It's a thing. It's a real thing. Talk about it. And I would recommend you to find your people. Look on Facebook. There are hundreds of sites out there. Now, you know, find a site that suits you. There are sites that, you know, you're grieving for a person that's still alive. It's still grief. There are people out there who may focus on the stage of grief that you're at. You know, so some of them haven't got a very good name. All I know is that everyone who's campaigning for parental alienation are motivated to do a good job and to end parental alienation, is talk about it. I would recommend to read. I find if there's a group local to you, I help out once a month for a group called Both Parents Matter, who are all over Wales, where alienated parents, alienated grandparents, even some brothers and sisters come every week and every month and talk. They have meetings all over Wales, and you know they will if you need it, they will help you make a plan. And you can talk to people who have all been through it, who are going through it, or people who are about to go through it. You know, they're fantastic people, wonderful organisation. But read and find your people. I found like Amanda Sillers. Go onto the Eeny Meeny site. Amanda Sillers. The amount of good. There's one woman there who gets it. She's always posting positive, educated awareness, and that's what I think that we need, you know. And I talk with people all over the world on a daily basis. There are great people from all over the world who will give you the support, who will listen, you know, ask questions. You know, these people weren't around. Well, they were around, but I wasn't aware of them. Where, you know, you get things in the beginning when you're angry. You'll send an email, you'll say, oh my God, you shouldn't be doing this. You'll pick up the phone, you have an argument, and you know, there's people in place who can support you, can talk to. The main thing you need to do is be calm and look after yourself, be healthy.
My name is Kelly Cooper, and my late partner took his own life from parental alienation. Tom took his own life on June the 16th, the day before Father's Day last year, because he had been victim to parental alienation for 3 years. Anytime he wanted to see his own children, he was shouted and screamed at. He was used for money, he had false allegations made against him, lies, and any time he wanted contact with his own children. Tom's abuse first started when he left their home. He moved around the corner to his mother's so he would still be close to his children. He absolutely hated himself for leaving his children in that home. So he took himself to a bridge and he had nobody else to talk to, so he messaged his alienator and told her what he was thinking of doing. And she texted him back to just go and jump, that they would all be better off without him. No one should be goaded into doing that. When we got together, Tom was a very different person that I knew. Tom was my childhood sweetheart. He was a very depressed man. He would get upset any time a visitation was cancelled, any time he kept contact via phone. It would always end up in nothing. She would do anything in her power to stop him. When Tom was here, he first thought about committing suicide a couple of months before he actually did. He had crippling anxiety and he didn't get to see his children on their birthdays. Thankfully, I got another couple of months with him. Tom was a lovely, kind man with a heart of gold. He would do anything for anybody. He loved and adored his children more than anything in this world. Tom wasn't just anybody. Tom was my everything. Tom was an amazing dad, an amazing stepdad. He was an amazing son, an amazing brother, an amazing uncle. And parental alienation has shattered our world. Everybody in our family, any friend of his, everybody, we have all been affected by parental alienation. Tom had just decided that he needed to do things properly and he wanted to see a solicitor, go to family court, because he was fed up of trying to be civil with somebody that just couldn't be. He never got that far. In 4 months of not seeing the children, it just got to him too much. And it wasn't until his inquest in December we sat there and we heard his medical files be read out, and he had cried out for help. He had told the doctor on numerous occasions about this abuse that was happening to him, and nothing was ever done to help him. I have been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder because I had to go and identify my partner, and he still had the rope around his neck. I have night terrors. My 8-year-old daughter has had to go through bereavement counselling with me. She asked me on her 8th birthday what had happened to him because I won't tell her how he really did it. We talk about him every day to keep his memory alive. It's absolutely broken me as a person. Every dream that I ever had has been shattered. Everything, my future, all had Tom in it, and he was the missing piece to my little family. Since Tom has gone, I have set up a social media page to raise awareness on parental alienation, male mental health and suicide prevention. To anybody out there that is suffering from parental alienation, please reach out to people. You are not alone. Tom thought he was alone in this, and he was. I have spent the last 6 months helping other people in this situation, and it is what has kept me going. Please keep fighting and please keep strong.
The space at the table, he's waiting here for you. I pray, hope and listen, I'm always here for you. Although I will try not to weep, not to cry, you will always be the apple of my eye. Surrounded by love, surrounded by pain. Keep looking at your pictures again and again. The nights are so dark, I have you in my heart, where the warmth of my love shines through. I held you in my arms, you fallen for my charms. Your sweet smiling eyes made me cry. Once again you're not here amongst the festive cheer. Since you've gone I keep asking why. Everyone can see the pain in my eyes. You're the only one I hope you realize. The space at the table is waiting here for you. I pray, hope and listen, I'm always here for you. Although I will try not to weep, not to cry, you will always be the apple of my eye. For me this is the third, without a spoken word, though we talk every day in my mind. My love is so strong, it carries me along. You're my hope, you're always on my mind. Every day I hide this pain in my heart. You're the only one I wish we could restore. The space at the table is waiting here for you. I pray, hope and listen, I'm always here for you. Although I will try not to weep, not to cry, you will always be the apple of my eye. Maybe next year the mist will disappear, the road ahead will brighten and be clear. We'll be a family again, fix the broken chain, the world will turn again, 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 again. The space at the table is waiting here for you. I pray, hope and listen, I'm always here for you. Although I will try not to weep,